Okay, so I just had like a feeling. What's my? Anyway, I had a feeling because done today. I think I chipped my tooth a few days ago. So I've been watching more of these hearings. Been reading a little bit, but mostly watching hearings on. I watched the Muller testimony, where he didn't say much. If it's in the report, I stand by the report. I haven't read the report, but I've heard people talk about it, what its findings and. So, yes, and now I'm currently watching Barr's, Attorney General Barr's testimony to the Senate Judicial Committee. So, there's this question, why, like in the Mueller report, regarding the obstruction issues in Volume 2, which is the alleged obstruction actions taken by the President, Donald Trump, into Mueller's own investigation. So Mueller was investigating if there was conspiracy and coordination, which is a legal thing, not collusion. But Mueller was investigating whether there was a conspiracy and coordination between the Trump campaign and Russians' interference into the 2016 presidential election. So that's what Mueller was investigating. And while he was doing the investigating, doing the investigation, it appears that Trump may have tried to obstruct that investigation. That is so the Volume 2 deals with that alleged obstruction. So in Volume 1, Mueller concludes that there was no conspiracy and coordination. So as far as that's concerned, the conspiracy issue, Mueller, I think, concluded that there wasn't any conspiracy, so there wasn't any crime committed by the Trump campaign. But in Volume 2, regarding Trump's alleged obstruction into Mueller's investigation into the Trump-Russia conspiracy, Mueller comes to this very strange conclusion, where he says, what did he say? I should read that conclusion, but it says like there isn't any evidence to he doesn't indict Trump. There were apparently 10 charges of alleged obstruction, and Mueller did not indict the president on those charges. However, he does not exonerate the president. So there's this, so why did he come up with the that kind of a finding? Oh, wait a minute. I think I made a mistake. Actually, Volume 1, what happened was They found out the Russians did interfere. Sort of messing this up. Volume 1, they did find that. Oh yeah, the volume 1. There are two findings. Muller found out there was Russian interference. There was a social media campaign, and there was the hacking into the Clinton server and releasing those emails. So there was the volume 1. There was the Russian interference, and then but however there was no conspiracy or coordination between the Trump campaign and the Russians. Right. Those are the two findings in volume 1. In volume 2. That was where it says here Trump's reaction to Mueller appointment, and that is where the obstruction of justice, yeah, that was true. So this is where he comes to that very strange conclusion. I want to look at I want the exact. One reason Mueller said. Oh, here is something like that. The report quote does. Okay, here it is. Obstruction of justice. This is Wikipedia. Regarding obstruction of justice, the report stated that the investigation, and I quote, did not establish that the president was involved in an underlying crime related to Russian election interference. Oh, okay. End quote. But investigators wrote that obstruction of justice could still occur, quote, regardless of whether a person committed an underlying wrong. Oh, that is an interesting question, actually. See, this is an interesting conclusion because so what I was actually thinking about is like he's saying that in order for there to be an obstruction of justice, if the president did not commit conspiracy or coordination with the Russians to interfere in the 2016 elections, if that is the conclusion that there is no conspiracy, there is no crime, right? If there is no conspiracy, there is no crime. So can the president there, if he takes actions to nonetheless obstruct Mueller from doing his investigations, is it still obstruction of justice if it's already been concluded there is nothing to obstruct? So he's saying there that Trump bar is a quote from the Wikipedia. Trump, Barr, Rudy Giuliani, and others have persistently and incorrectly maintained that an individual cannot obstruct justice unless the individual committed an underlying crime. So that's what Trump was saying and all that. Trump, Barr, and Rudy Giuliani. But the Mueller report says, quote, the investigation, quote, did not establish that the president was involved in an underlying crime related to Russian election interference, end quote, but investigators wrote that obstruction of justice could still occur, quote, regardless of whether a person committed an underlying wrong. So that is their conclusion. Okay, anyway, that's a bit of a technical thing, I think. So Mueller did not indict Trump regarding the second part, obstruction. And there was this. He cites this Office of legal counsel saying that. Okay, here you go. There are this is why they didn't charge Trump for the crime. Quote, this is from Wikipedia. Firstly, the investigation abided by Department of Justice Office of Legal Counsel opinion written in 2000 that a sitting president cannot be federally indicted. A stance taken from the start of the investigation. Secondly, investigators do not want to charge Trump because a federal criminal charge would hinder a sitting president's, quote, capacity to govern and potentially preempt constitutional process for addressing presidential misconduct, end quote, with a footnote reference to impeachment. All right. Right, so we get it, right? So he's saying he didn't charge Trump with the crime because the DOJ said that you cannot charge. This is not as was pointed out in one of the senators, I think, this is not a law. This is a opinion by an executive branch of government, the Department of Justice, which is part of the executive here, I think, because it's not a court opinion, it's just an opinion given by the Department of Justice. So it's not really a law, but they're saying sitting president cannot be charged with a crime because it would, this is the other reason is, because if you charge the president with the crime, it'll hinder his capacity to govern. And he's saying that preempt the constitutional process for addressing presidential misconduct, which is impeachment. I wish. Okay, so why did okay, this is what I was thinking. I'm just gonna say what I was thinking. So I was thinking like maybe Muller didn't. No, okay. There's one mistake here. One mistake people were making. The Democrats, when they were in the House Intelligence Committee hearing where Mueller was, that hearing with Mueller, or I think was it the Democrats? I mean, it's the Democrats. I don't know whether it was the judiciary hearing or the intelligence hearing, but anyway, they kept on saying, "Oh, if the opinion of the if the DOJ opinion did not exist, Mueller would have indicted Trump." Okay, but that's not true. That's Mueller sort of actually he incorrectly agreed with one of the senators, but later came back and corrected himself. The report does not say that if the Department of Justice did not have this legal opinion that a sitting president cannot be indicted, Mueller would have charged the president. That's not what the report says. The report says, well, this is what I was thinking. The report said that there was insufficient evidence to charge Trump with obstruction of justice. And where this, and in the Barr interview, he actually goes into a bit of a detail about why some of the actions could not, won't be sufficient to charge Trump with the obstruction. So, for instance, one of the okay, for instance, the White House's special Don McGahn, right? He was like the White House's special counsel, and apparently the president, apparently according to the report, I mean, I'm just sort of thinking about this. He said I think this is what the report says. Like I don't want to read the Wikipedia thing. So the president apparently instructs Don McGahn to, like, there was a New York Times published in which the New York Times said in a story that the president ordered McGahn to, I think, tell the acting director of the FBI to fire Mueller because there was an apparent conflict of interest. And so this came out in the New York Times article, and then apparently Trump told McGahn to release a statement saying that the president did not instruct McGahn to tell the director to fire Mueller. And so Barr was saying, well, telling someone to be removed because they have a conflict is different from telling someone to be fired. So anyway, what I was thinking was, right, during the when Mueller was testifying before the Congress, he did not answer a lot of questions. I think there were a few reasons he didn't want to answer. He said that because there were ongoing investigations, so he didn't want to, prejudice those investigations. And then there might have been some national security questions. Okay, but here's the thing. If Mueller, and we have to agree with what Barr said, that when Barr came up with that letter after he received the report, he said the principal conclusions of the report are that the president did not commit there wasn't enough evidence to charge the president with obstruction of justice. So whereas Mueller said the president is not exonerated, the Barr said no, there wasn't any evidence. So why did Barr come out and sort of say the president was not indicted, whereas Mueller said no, the president is not exonerated? So why is there this discrepancy? Is Mueller disagreeing with Barr's conclusion that the evidence available could not satisfy beyond a reasonable doubt that the president obstructed the Mueller investigation? Barr said the report shows that the evidence does not satisfy beyond a reasonable doubt. Therefore, we are not going to indict the president. What Mueller is saying, I think what Mueller is saying the same thing. I think Mueller agrees with Barr's conclusion, but he did not state it in his report. Why didn't Mueller state that in his report if he agrees with Barr that the evidence cannot be used to prove beyond reasonable doubt that the president committed an obstruction of justice? Why? This is the question. If Mueller agrees with Barr, why didn't he state so in his report? Why did he not only choose to decline to press a charge? He also wrote this statement: the president is not exonerated. Why did he do that? Like Barr was saying, hey, traditionally, a prosecutor, if they do the investigation, they will either, it's like a binary decision, either they will elect to charge or they will decline to charge. It's not like you can't take this middle ground, right? He has to either charge or decline to charge. But Mueller declined to charge, but he also left this kind of open-ended thing like the president is not exonerated. So that is the confusing part about the report. And then the Democrats sort of interpreted this to mean like, oh, like apparently, like there was this argument with Barr saying that, oh, he sort of lied about the report's findings, and no. What the Barr chose to say, we are not going to charge the president because the evidence does not satisfy beyond a reasonable doubt. But Mueller, even though he agrees with Barr about that conclusion, nonetheless did not choose to charge the president. Now, we could say the reason he didn't come to that conclusion not to charge is because of the opinion of the Justice Department, or this other consideration that if he, sort of related consideration is that if he charged the sitting president, then this will hinder the president's ability to govern and stuff like that. I think he did. I think he didn't charge the president because he wanted to, I think, be fair to Trump. Because let's say Mueller ended up in his report saying there was enough evidence. No, wait a minute. He can't say that because he knows there is no evidence. Okay. This is what I'm thinking. Yeah. Okay. this is what I was getting. The reason Mueller did not state in his report that the president is not going to be charged is there were other investigations ongoing. There were other investigations ongoing around this whole issue, like before the, how the FBI was, how that investigation started, by the Steele dossier. And also, okay, this is what I'm thinking. I think there is other facts, other evidence around this thing that has the potential to produce evidence that could be used to charge the president with obstruction of justice. However, this evidence was not available to Mueller because they are still being investigated, right? Let's just say the evidence is out there. Mueller knows the FBI, these other agencies are conducting these investigations. The evidence is there, and also the president himself could be interviewed, but he wasn't. So there is this evidence floating around. Mueller knows this because, as part of the investigative process. His team knows this evidence is there. Okay, that's why he didn't charge the president here. I mean, you could say, all right, so why did Mueller not just simply wait for these other investigations to conclude them and then get the evidence, and therefore he will have a stronger case for making the indictment? But he says no, like it would it's a time issue. He wants it because if he did not, if he elected to wait for all these other investigations to complete, this would be unfair to the president, because the president would have a cloud around him, like, oh, the president is still under investigation, and that would unfairly prejudice his campaign for 2020. So that would be unfair to the president, and also it would take it would be unfair to the public, I guess, because you don't know how long these other investigations were going to take. So for this political reason, it's not really a political reason, but in the interests of fairness, Muller elected, I believe, Muller elected to complete the investigation in March instead of waiting for the possibility that other evidence will accumulate through these other investigations. And he did so because he wanted to give the president he wanted to be fair to the president. He wanted to remove this cloud of the investigation. So that's why I think he says the president is not exonerated, because he believes that these other investigations, these other ongoing investigations, may produce evidence that can satisfy the obstruction elements, the offense. So that's why I believe Mueller refused to come to the conclusion that the president committed obstruction of justice. I don't think the Department of Justice opinion is relevant, because if Mueller had enough evidence to charge or to indict the president, he could say, "Oh, we are going. We." He could say in his report, because of this legal opinion, we cannot indict the president. But that's not what he says. He doesn't say he just mentions that thing. I hope I've made this clear in this very rambling way. The reason Mueller did not indict President Trump is because the evidence produced by his investigation at that point in March 2019 was not sufficient to satisfy the obstruction of justice charge beyond a reasonable doubt. And that is the same conclusion Barr arrived at, and Barr's conclusion is right. However, whereas Barr decided to publicly state that the evidence, publicly state that the Mueller report establishes that the president cannot be indicted of obstruction of justice, which would be used by Trump to sort of say, look, see, I didn't do any crime. If Mueller said, let's imagine if Mueller said the Trump cannot be indicted, obviously Trump will use that, and then he will use it politically, and that would politically benefit him. So Barr's conclusion can be used by the president to politically benefit him. But Muller did not want the president to politically benefit from any such statement, right? But at the same time, he didn't want to prejudice the president as well. So he came to this very fair conclusion. He didn't indict the president, right? But he did not make that. But he did not. He did not exonerate him as well, because if he says, because if he made the conclusion like Barr, that would be politically beneficial to the president. Now, if the truth is that the president didn't commit the crime, yeah, he should come to that conclusion. But I think there is other investigations going on, and those investigations, Mueller thinks, will produce evidence that can be used to indict the president. So that's why Mueller did not want to give the president a conclusion that would be politically useful to him, right? So he was trying, and so he was trying to be fair to the president. He wanted to end the investigation. How is Mueller fair to the president? Mueller is fair to the president in this way: by choosing to end the investigation in March, the cloud of the Mueller investigation surrounding the president is removed, thereby giving him a fair opportunity to get elected in 2020, because the cloud doesn't exist. However, he is also fair to the investigative process, or this idea that the rule of law. Okay, the ending the investigation was how Mueller was fair to the president, but also by choosing not to indict the president and leave this kind of open-ended, we don't exonerate the president. The Mueller does this also deprives the president of using the report to his political benefit. So as a result of this middle conclusion, the president cannot take the report to his political benefit, and at the same time, the president is given an opportunity to conduct his 2020 campaign without the cloud of the Mueller investigation hanging around, right? So that's why. So there was so many other. There were all these external considerations that, there were these external things that Mueller took into account in coming at this conclusion. You know how he says in the report, every word was considered. So his team considered every single wording in that report. That's how carefully they deliberated this. You see? I think it's a very interesting conclusion, and the conclusion was not simply a legal conclusion. It wasn't like done in isolation. I think the conclusion that not to indict, but also say the president is not exonerated, is informed by the context, the political context within which and the timing, all of it's also that conclusion takes the law into account, but it also takes the political context into account. You see, that's why when Barr said, "Oh, the report says the president cannot be indicted," Mueller wrote a complaint saying, "Oh, well, this doesn't actually provide enough context." That was his complaint. The media thought Barr was lying or something. No, Barr simply took a very isolated kind of view. He did not consider the implications of saying the president is not indicted, whereas Mueller took the implications of coming to that conclusion into account. And I guess if we're going to be fair to Barr, we have to just say that Barr does not know about these surrounding investigations, or maybe he knows. I don't know, but Mueller definitely knew about these investigations and perhaps some of the details surrounding them, about which he wouldn't answer. So to be fair to Barr, if we assume that Barr does not know the specifics of these other investigations, then maybe he is okay in coming to that conclusion. But we have to consider the fact that Muller's team and Barr's team were all having these discussions before the report was finished, about how I think Barr knew before the report was finished. I think Muller told him that he would come to this conclusion, this kind of middle ground, and I think they were. So I don't know. I think Barr, maybe he did some kind of, maybe he sort of. Maybe he released that statement because he wanted to give the president a political boost for 3 weeks, for 3 weeks, until the whole report was released. Oh, that was like a 37-minute rambling rant. So I hope I made this clear. The Mueller report is fair to the president because it removes, by ending the investigation in March, it removes the cloud of the Mueller investigation away from the president, thereby allowing him to conduct his 2020 elections in a fair manner. But it also does not exonerate him because Mueller believes there is other evidence out there that can potentially, he's not saying it for sure, that can possibly in the future accrue enough evidence to indict the president. And there was this other consideration that a sitting president cannot be indicted because it will prevent his capacity to perform his functions. What do you all think? Do you think by failing to indict the president and say he's not exonerated, is that unfair to Trump? Was that unfair to Trump? Because based on the evidence contained in the report itself, Mueller and Barr agreed that it was insufficient to indict the president with obstruction of justice. So do you think Mueller should have stated that explicitly, which would be politically beneficial to Trump? However, if Mueller knows there is other evidence out there that could be used to implicate Trump, however, he couldn't use it now, do you think it was right for Mueller to make that claim that the president is not exonerated? Do you think that was fair? Was that a fair thing to do? I don't know. I think it's fair. The conclusion it's not a purely legal conclusion. It's a conclusion informed by the political ramifications of what the report can do. Should Mueller have taken these extrinsic political factors into account? Well, let's put it this way. If, as a matter of truth, Mueller knows there is insufficient evidence to indict Trump with the obstruction of justice, he should have done so, and I believe he would have done so. However, due to the time issue and in the interest of being fair to the president as far as his 2020 election campaign, Muller decided to release the report in March, which would be beneficial to Trump because at that point they didn't have the evidence to charge him. So, however, because he decided to finish the report early when he could have waited longer and produced more evidence, Muller Muller gave the president the benefit of removing the cloud of in this investigation at the expense at the expense of not exonerating him. So the president cannot have it like, Muller said, okay, we will give you this, we will end the investigation early and not charge you with indictment. However, it'll come at the cost of this statement saying you're not exonerated. Anyway, I'll end this now. I'm just ranting. Anyway.